I can barely breathe as I press my forehead against Atlas's warm neck. My fingers tremble, tangling in his silky black mane, as tears slide down my cheeks. 6 months since John's accident, and only here, in this dimly lit stable with my massive Frisian stallion, do I feel anything but numb. "You're all I have left," I whisper, my voice breaking. Atlas turns his proud head, his velvet lips brushing my shoulder in a gesture so tender it makes my heart ache. His familiar scent of leather and sweet hay wraps around me, and I find myself leaning closer. My hands begin to wander over his muscled neck, tracing old scars from before I rescued him. He's come so far from that wild-eyed creature I found in the kill pen 3 years ago. Now his dark eyes hold nothing but devotion as he lowers his head to my level. "Such a good boy," I murmur, finding that spot behind his ears that makes him lean into my touch. His coat gleams in the fading light, soft as silk beneath my palms. Atlas shifts his weight, pressing closer until I'm trapped between his solid warmth and the stable wall. The rough wood scrapes my back through my thin tank top as I arch against him. Heat blooms low in my belly when his hot breath fans across my collarbone. I know I should step away, but his presence is intoxicating. The raw power contained in his massive frame, yet so gentle. My breathing grows ragged as his lips graze my neck. Atlas stands perfectly still, but I can feel him trembling beneath my wandering hands. Every brush of his velvet soft muzzle against my skin sends electricity through my nerves. My hands began to wander, and time began to stand still. We became one in that moment, and we both felt it. And as night settles fully over the stable, I know this is just the beginning of our story together. Atlas will always be there, offering his strength and devotion, ready to help me heal in ways I never could have imagined. Now going back a few months to how that night unfolded. I stare at the stranger in my bathroom mirror, barely recognizing myself. 34 years old, and everything I thought I knew about life has been shattered. My chestnut hair hangs loose for once, tangled from restless sleep. Dark circles shadow green eyes that used to sparkle with ambition. I trace the new lines around my mouth, badges of grief that appeared after John's accident 6 months ago. "You've changed," I whisper to my reflection. The manicured corporate executive is long gone, replaced by someone harder, leaner. My hands are callous now from farm work, nails short and practical. The designer suits gather dust while I live in worn jeans and flannel. Even my body has transformed, soft curves replaced by muscle earned through endless physical labor. Guilt gnaws at me as I think about how quickly I've adapted to life without John. He was the one who wanted this farm, who convinced me to leave Seattle's tech scene for 200 acres in rural Washington. "You'll love it, Haley," he'd promised. "It'll be an adventure." He was right, in ways neither of us expected. While he handled the crops, I discovered an unexpected passion for working with troubled horses. Especially Atlas, the massive black Frisian stallion we rescued from a kill pen 3 years ago. Everyone said he was too dangerous, too damaged from years of abuse. But I saw something in those dark eyes that called to me. "You're crazy, princess," John would tease, watching from the fence as I spent countless hours rehabilitating Atlas. "That horse is going to get you killed." But he supported me anyway, proud when Atlas gradually transformed under my care into something magnificent. Now John's gone, taken by a logging accident that replays in my nightmares. And Atlas has become something more than just a horse. Something that makes my skin flush hot with shame when I think about our growing connection. I splash cold water on my face, trying to cool the heat in my cheeks. "This has to stop," I tell my reflection firmly. But even as I say it, I know I'll end up in the stable tonight. I always do. The phone rings, making me jump. It's Karen from the local feed store, another well-meaning neighbor checking up on poor widow Wilson. "How are you holding up, honey?" she asks, concern heavy in her voice. "We haven't seen you at church lately." "I'm fine," I lie smoothly, the words familiar on my tongue. "Just busy with the farm." "You know, my nephew Mark is visiting next week. He's about your age, recently divorced." My stomach churns. "Karen, I appreciate it, but I'm not ready to date." It's been 6 months, dear. John would want you to move on. Would he, I wonder, staring at our wedding photo on the wall? What would he think if he knew the truth? That I'm not interested in dating because I've found comfort in the most forbidden place imaginable? I have to go, I tell Karen quickly. The farrier's coming today. It's another lie. No one's coming. But I need to escape her well-meaning matchmaking before I scream. As I hang up, my hands are shaking. The house feels like it's closing in on me. Memories of John lurking in every corner. Family photos mock me from the walls. His coffee mug still sits by the sink where he left it that last morning. I need to get out, need to breathe. My feet carry me to the stable automatically. The familiar scents of hay and leather wrap around me as I step inside. Atlas's massive head appears over his stall door at the sound of my approach, ears pricked forward in greeting. Hey, handsome, I whisper, reaching up to stroke his velvet nose. Concern fills his dark eyes as he studies me. He always knows when I'm upset, knows exactly what I need. But that's part of the problem, isn't it? The way he seems to understand me so completely. The way his presence fills the emptiness inside me. The way his touch makes me feel things I never should. This has to stop, I tell him, even as I slip into his stall. We can't keep doing this. Atlas just watches me with those knowing eyes, lowering his proud head in invitation. And as I press my face against his warm neck, breathing in his familiar scent, my resolution crumbles. I must be losing my mind, I whisper, fingers already tangling in his silky mane. But maybe that's okay. Maybe sometimes you have to lose your mind to save your soul. The setting sun streams through gaps in the weathered boards, painting everything in amber light. Soon darkness will fall, bringing with it choices I can never take back. Choices that would destroy me if anyone ever found out. But as Atlas's solid warmth surrounds me, chasing away the loneliness that's been my constant companion, I can't bring myself to care. Sometimes comfort comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes healing means breaking all the rules. My hands are trembling as they trace the familiar planes of his powerful body. Atlas stands perfectly still, but I can feel the tension thrumming through him. He knows what's coming. We both do. And as the last rays of sunlight fade, I make my choice. Let the world judge. Let Karen and her nephew Mark and all the well-meaning neighbors think what they want. Here in the growing darkness with Atlas, I've found something real, something that makes me feel alive again, even if it damns me forever. A shiver runs through me as I remember last month's disaster with David, the charming rancher from 3 properties over. We'd met at the farmer's market, his easy smile and strong hands reminding me painfully of John. After weeks of his persistent courtship, I'd finally agreed to dinner. Atlas knew before I did, I murmur against his warm neck, remembering how the stallion had acted that evening. I'd worn a dress for the first time since John's funeral, attempting to feel feminine again. But when I'd stopped by the stable to feed before my date, Atlas had been uncharacteristically aggressive. He'd pinned his ears back, pacing his stall with thundering hooves. When I'd tried to calm him, he'd bared his teeth, something he hadn't done since those first wild days after his rescue. The message was clear. He could smell another man's cologne on my skin, and he didn't approve. You were right about him, I whisper, running my hands over Atlas's powerful shoulders. David had turned out to be like all the others, full of expectations about fixing the grieving widow. He tried to kiss me goodnight, pressing me against my porch railing. The memory makes me shudder. Atlas shifts closer, his massive body radiating protective warmth. I'd fled from David's kiss straight to the stable that night, still in my dress and heels. Atlas had been waiting, his earlier aggression melting into tender concern as I cried against his neck. That was the first night things changed between us. The first time his gentle nuzzling had sparked something other than comfort. The first time I'd felt heat pool low in my belly at his touch. No one understands me like you do, I breathe, pressing closer as his velvet lips trace my collarbone. There had been others after David, well-meaning men introduced by neighbors or fellow farmers. But Atlas's reaction was always the same. Rage when he smelled them on me, followed by possessive tenderness when I inevitably returned to him instead. The foreclosure notice trembles in my hands, the bank's red stamp burning my eyes. 3 missed payments. It doesn't seem possible. I'd thought John's life insurance would carry us longer, but between funeral costs, equipment repairs, and feed bills, the money vanished like morning dew. "We'll figure this out," I whisper, sinking down onto a hay bale as Atlas watches me with concerned eyes. $47,000 in 90 days, or we lose everything. My voice cracks on the last word. Everything. The house John and I dreamed of, the stable I built with my own hands, and most devastatingly, Atlas himself. Running my fingers through my tangled hair, I forced myself to think like the corporate strategist I used to be. I could sell the tractor, maybe some of the cattle, but even that would only buy us a month or two. The tech companies in Seattle would snap me up in a heartbeat, but commuting isn't feasible with the farm to run. Atlas's soft nickering draws me from my spiral. He stretches his neck over the stall door, lips gentle as they brush tears I hadn't realized were falling. The thought of losing him makes my chest physically ache. After all we've been through together, after everything he's become to me, I can't let that happen. "I won't let them take you," I promise fiercely, standing to wrap my arms around his massive neck. His warm breath stirs my hair as he holds me close, somehow understanding the gravity of the moment. A sudden memory surfaces. Mark Wilson, no relation, from the neighboring farm had offered to buy Atlas just last month. "Fine piece of horseflesh," he'd said, eyeing my stallion's powerful frame. "I'd give you 60 grand for him, straight cash." The mere thought makes bile rise in my throat. Atlas was abused before I rescued him. Mark's reputation for being rough with his animals is well known. Besides, the money would only delay the inevitable. Without Atlas, I'd have nothing left to live for anyway. My fingers trace the familiar contours of his muscled shoulder as I consider my options. I could board horses. The stable has 10 empty stalls. But getting established would take time we don't have. Selling the back 40 acres might work, but in this economy. Atlas shifts closer, his solid warmth anchoring me as my mind races. There's always Thomas Blake, the wealthy developer who's been trying to buy the whole property since John died. He'd offered an obscene amount of money, wanting to build luxury homes. The thought of bulldozers destroying our dream makes me physically ill. "There has to be another way," I murmur, more to myself than Atlas. His velvet lips find my neck, offering comfort as always. The tender gesture sparks an idea so outrageous it steals my breath. Carson Mills, the elderly owner of the largest horse breeding operation in the county, had approached me at the feed store last week. He'd seen me working with Atlas, noted how I'd transformed him from that wild rescue case. "I need someone with your touch," he'd said, pressing his card into my hand. "My stallions are worth millions, but they're high-strung. Need a special kind of handling, if you know what I mean. Pay would reflect the delicate nature of the work." I'd stuffed the card in my pocket, face burning at his implied meaning. But now, running my fingers over Atlas's warm hide, I pull it out with trembling hands. The stable is growing dark, but I can still make out the embossed phone number. My other hand tangles in Atlas's mane as I consider what accepting Carson's offer would mean. The things I'd have to do. The lines I'd have to cross. But as Atlas nuzzles me tenderly, his presence everything I need it to be, I realize I've already crossed society's lines. What's one more transgression if it means keeping him? Keeping our home? "We do what we have to," I whisper, pulling out my phone. Atlas watches with those knowing eyes as I dial Carson's number. My voice barely shakes as I say, "Mr. Mills, it's Haley Wilson. About that job offer." As I negotiate terms with Carson, Atlas presses closer. His solid strength reminds me what I'm fighting for. This farm isn't just land and buildings. It's sanctuary. It's where I found myself, found love again when I thought my heart was dead. Found something deeper than conventional morality could ever understand. I end the call with shaking hands but steel in my spine. The pay will more than cover what we need. I'll have to drive to Carson's farm 3 nights a week, work with his prized stallions in ways that would shock polite society. But I'll do whatever it takes. You're worth it, I tell Atlas, pressing my face into his mane. You're worth everything. His soft nickering seems to agree as night settles over our stable. Tomorrow I'll start my new job, adding another secret to the ones I already keep. But here in the darkness with Atlas, I know I've made the right choice. Some things are worth any price. The sheets cling to my feverish skin as I twist in bed, unable to sleep. My first night working at Carson's farm plays behind my closed eyes. The way his prized Arabian stallion responded to my touch, how quickly I was able to calm him. It should have felt wrong, but all I could think about was Atlas waiting at home. My fingers trail absently across my collarbone, remembering Atlas's velvety lips finding that same spot earlier tonight when I returned. He'd known where I'd been, what I'd done. But instead of rejection, he'd shown only tenderness, pressing me against the stable wall with gentle insistence until my guilt melted away. This is madness, I whisper to the darkness, but my body hums with remembered feelings. The power of controlling such magnificent creatures. The way they respond to me, my voice, my presence. The rush of dominating beings that could easily overpower me, yet choose to submit. My nightgown feels too constrictive as I kick off the sheets. Through my open window, I can hear Atlas moving in his stable, his soft nickering carrying on the night breeze. He knows I'm awake, thinking of him, always thinking of him. The envelope of cash from Carson sits on my nightstand, enough to cover this month's payment with some left over. 2 more sessions like tonight and we'll be caught up. A few months of regular work and the farm will be secure. Heat floods my cheeks as I imagine what people would say if they knew. But their judgment means nothing compared to keeping our sanctuary. This house, this land, this connection that defies explanation. It's everything. My hand slips beneath my pillow, finding the length of Atlas's mane I'd woven into a bracelet. My breathing quickens. In the morning, I'll face the world with my mask firmly in place. But here in the dark, I can admit what I truly need. The sound of hooves on wooden boards floats through my window. Atlas is restless too, sensing my turmoil. Understanding floods through me. He's not just my salvation. I'm his as well. Whatever it takes to keep us together, I'll do it gladly. Sleep finally claims me as dawn approaches. And through it all, Atlas's dark eyes watch over me, promising that everything will be all right. We'll make it through this, together. Pre-dawn light filters through my bedroom window as I dress for another session at Carson's. My hands tremble slightly as I button my fitted black riding shirt. The mirror reflects someone I barely recognize. Hair pulled back severely, makeup perfect for the first time in months. Carson likes his handlers to look professional. It's just work, I whisper to my reflection, but the flush creeping up my neck betrays me. Last night's session still burns in my memory. The way his prize Andalusian responded to my techniques, the power thrumming through that magnificent body as I brought him to heel. The payment envelope grows thicker each week. Soon we'll be caught up on the mortgage, maybe even ahead. But the real cost isn't measured in dollars. It's in the way my skin feels too tight afterward, the way I rush home to Atlas with need clawing at my insides. My boots click against the hardwood as I head to the stable for morning feeding. Atlas's head appears over his stall door the moment I enter, nostrils flaring as he scents me. He knows where I'm going tonight. His powerful body radiates tension as I approach. I know, handsome, I murmur, pressing my face against his warm neck. But it's all for you. Everything I do is for you. His lips find my hair, surprisingly gentle for such a massive creature. My hands slide over his muscled shoulder of their own accord, feeling the strength coiled beneath his sleek coat. The contrast between his raw power and tender restraint makes me shiver. I'll be home soon, I promise, reluctantly pulling away. But Atlas pins me with those knowing eyes, seeing straight through my practiced composure to the trembling need beneath. He tosses his proud head, mane flowing like black silk, and my breath catches. Tonight, when I return from Carson's reeking of other stallions, Atlas will remind me who I really belong to. But for now, I have to go. Have to play my part in this dangerous game that keeps us together. The sun is rising over our sanctuary as I climb into my truck, Atlas's powerful whinny following me down the drive. Some prices are worth paying, some secrets worth keeping, and some loves transcend all boundaries. Carson's office feels too warm as he slides another stack of bills across his mahogany desk. "You have quite the gift, Haley," he drawls, eyes lingering on my riding breeches. "My stallions have never performed better. Perhaps we should discuss expanding your duties." My stomach lurches at his implied meaning, but I keep my face neutral. The envelope is thicker than usual, enough to cover 2 mortgage payments. "I'm comfortable with our current arrangement," I say carefully. His laugh holds no warmth. "Comfortable? Is that what you call what you do with my horses?" He leans forward. "Don't play innocent, Mrs. Wilson. We both know what you really are." Rage and shame warren my chest as I snatch the envelope. "We're done here." "Are we?" Carson's smile turns cruel. "What would your neighbors think if they knew? Or the bank? Such scandal might affect your loan status." Ice floods my veins. He's had this planned all along, drawing me in, gathering evidence to blackmail me. My hand trembles on the doorknob. "Think about my offer," he calls as I flee. "I'll expect your answer tomorrow." The drive home passes in a blur of tears and racing thoughts. I've been such a fool, thinking I could control the situation. Now everything's at risk. My reputation, the farm, Atlas. Atlas. The thought of him centers me as I pull into our drive. He'll know what to do. He always knows. The stable's familiar scents wrap around me as I stumble inside. Atlas's massive head appears, ears pricked forward in concern. One look at my face and he's shouldering his stall door, wood creaking in protest. "It's all falling apart," I sob into his mane. "Carson knows. He wants. I can't." Atlas's powerful body presses me against the wall, offering comfort and protection as always. His warmth seeps into my bones as my tears gradually slow. In the growing darkness, an answer begins to form. I still have money saved from Carson's previous payments. Not enough to save the farm, but enough to start over. There's a small property for sale 3 counties over. Nothing fancy, but it has a stable. We could disappear tonight, leave everything behind. Atlas's soft nickering seems to agree as I run the plan through my mind. We'd lose the farm, but we'd have our freedom, our dignity, each other. "Just you and me," I whisper, fingers tangling in his silky mane. "That's all we need." His velvet lips trace my neck as I pull out my phone. Within an hour, I've made the arrangements. By dawn, we'll be gone, leaving behind the farm, the memories, the shame. Starting fresh where no one knows us or can judge what we've become to each other. Some would call it running away, but as Atlas's solid warmth surrounds me, chasing away the last of my fears, I know it's really running toward something. Toward truth, toward freedom, toward a love that defies all boundaries. Let them have the farm. We found something far more precious. Once again that evening we created memories together. The stable lit up under the bond we created and the memories we made. The moon hangs heavy over unfamiliar fields as I lead Atlas down the ramp of our borrowed trailer. 3 counties and a lifetime away from our old farm, this humble 5-acre plot feels like salvation. The small farmhouse needs work, but the stable is solid. Just 2 stalls, but we only need 1. "Welcome home," I whisper, watching Atlas explore his new territory. His powerful form gleams silver in the moonlight as he circles the paddock, testing the fences. No more Carson, no more judgmental neighbors, no more shame. Just us. The realtor didn't ask questions when I paid cash, though her eyes lingered on Atlas's impressive frame. Quite the specimen, she'd said, if only she knew. Hours pass as I settle Atlas into his stall, unpacking our meager belongings. Most of our old life stayed behind, furniture, photos, memories. But I'd brought his special grooming brushes, the soft blanket he loves, and the bracelet woven from his mane that never leaves my wrist. Dawn breaks over our new kingdom as I finally collapse onto my sleeping bag in the empty house. Atlas's soft nickering drifts through my open window. He's still awake, standing guard, protecting me, as always. We made it, I tell the rising sun, feeling truly free for the first time since John died. Here, no one knows us. No one can judge what we've become to each other. No one can threaten to tear us apart. The old farm is probably in foreclosure by now. Carson's probably furious, realizing his blackmail scheme failed. Let them search. They'll never find us. I've covered our tracks well, using cash, borrowed vehicles, false names. The only truth that matters is what Atlas and I share. Exhaustion finally claims me as morning light fills the room. I dream of powerful bodies and gentle touches, of submission freely given and pleasure without shame. When I wake, Atlas is still there, watching through my window with those knowing eyes. So 1 year later, our little farm has flourished in unexpected ways. The garden feeds us through summer, and I've started a small business giving riding lessons to local kids. Not that anyone rides Atlas, he's mine alone in all ways that matter. The neighbors are friendly but distant, respecting our privacy. They see only what we choose to show, a quiet widow and her devoted horse, nothing more. If they notice how I spend my nights in the stable, instead of the house, they don't mention it. Some nights watching Atlas move in the moonlight, I remember our old life. The shame, the fear, the desperate choices. But then he turns those dark eyes on me, full of understanding and acceptance. And I know we made the right choice. Love doesn't always follow society's rules. Sometimes it gallops wild and free, breaking all boundaries. Sometimes it's found not in human arms, but in the powerful embrace of something far more primal. As the sun sets on another perfect day, I head to the stable where Atlas waits. His soft nickering welcomes me home, not to a building or a place, but to his heart. To this connection that defies explanation or judgment. Winter had brought Roy into my life, a local farrier with kind eyes and rough hands who never pushed too hard for answers about my past. He'd stop by with coffee after seeing to other clients' horses, lingering longer each time. For 6 months, I let myself pretend at normalcy, even entertaining thoughts of what a conventional life might feel like again. That illusion shattered one sultry August evening. Roy had texted he was stopping by to check Atlas's new shoes. I'd lost track of time in the stable, lost in one of those private moments with Atlas that defined our true relationship. The crunch of tires on gravel sent ice through my veins. "Hello?" Roy's voice carried from the driveway. I scrambled to compose myself, heart thundering as Atlas shifted his massive frame protectively. Thank God for the stable's dim lighting and the fact that Roy always announced himself from a distance, a farrier's habit with strange horses. "Just a minute," I called out, voice surprisingly steady as I straightened my clothes. Atlas's frustrated nickering spoke volumes about the interruption. I met Roy at the stable door, blocking the entrance. "Sorry, I was just finishing up some grooming." The lie felt bitter on my tongue. He smiled that easy smile that had first drawn me to him. "No problem. Mind if I check his right front? Thought I heard a slight offbeat when he was walking yesterday." "He's already settled for the night," I said quickly. Very touchy about his routine. "Maybe tomorrow?" Roy's brow furrowed slightly. He'd never known Atlas to be difficult. "You sure? Won't take but a minute." Atlas chose that moment to stamp heavily, the sound echoing through the stable. The message was clear. This was his territory, his time. "Tomorrow would be better," I insisted, laying a hand on Roy's arm. "I'll call you?" He studied my face for a long moment. Something in his eyes told me he sensed the deeper truth, that there were parts of my life he'd never be allowed to share, parts that belonged only to Atlas and me. "Sure thing," he said finally, stepping back. "Tomorrow." I watched his truck disappear down the drive, relief and regret warring in my chest. Roy deserved someone whole, someone normal, not someone who'd given her heart to 4 hooves and a wild spirit.